Hello, it's Shari here today, and I'm going to be making this valentine with some non-traditional valentine colors. And I'm going to start by ink blending a background. So I've got some distress inks here and some Nina Solar White cardstock, and I'm just going to cut this down into 4 panels. So I'm going to use 2 of these basically. So I'm cutting it at 5.5, and then I'm cutting it at 4.25. So the 2 that I don't use, I will just use for a future project. But one of these is going to be the panel that's my background, and then I will do my stamping on the other one. So I have some distress inks here. I have abandoned coral, dried marigold, and scattered straw, and I'm making sort of a peachy, pinky sunset variegation across my card. So I'm starting with the abandoned coral, and this will be on the top. And I'm just going to speed things up a little bit so you can see this whole process, but I'm just putting the ink on a little bit at a time using a blending tool and starting off my paper and then pulling onto the cardstock. And I try to vary the direction that I go. I'll go clockwise and counterclockwise. Next, I'll go in with the dried marigold and I'll blend from the sides, and I'll cross over that abandoned coral a little bit so that my colors will blend together. And then I'll always go back to the color that's at the top and blend that line a little bit more. So it's just a back and forth kind of game here. So here I am with the abandoned coral again. You can see how that top's getting nice and dark, and a lot of those sort of smudges and strokes that you see will eventually sort of fade away as the ink dries and absorbs into the paper. Now I'm going to go in with scattered straw just below that dried marigold. I'm wiping up some of that abandoned coral just so I don't pull any of that in with this lighter yellow color. And I'm trying to sort of take it down to the white cardstock at the bottom, so that it's white at the bottom. Although I decided that, you'll see here in a minute, that it was almost too stark white with the colors that I had at the top. And I'll go in with some antique linen along the bottom. So here's the antique linen, and I'm actually using this blending brush. These are new to me. I haven't actually used these before, but I just thought I'd give it a try. And it actually is very soft and just puts down a very soft layer of the antique linen, because I didn't want too much antique linen. I just wanted to kind of take the brightness of the white away slightly. So I'll have to play with these brushes a little more and let you know how I like them, but it is a very soft brush. So now I'm going to use the polka dot backdrop die, and I'm going to cut this piece that I've blended. Now I like to use my metal shim when I do background dies like this, because I make sure that it gets cut through the center very well. That's usually where I have the trouble with my background dies, is through the middle. And now I have that lovely little tiny polka dot background. I decided that it looked best on a cream colored card instead of a white colored card. Just kind of went with that softness that I had going on. So this will be behind it, and so the polka dots will be like a nice creamy color. So now to do my stamping. So I am going to be coloring with colored pencils, and I'm using Prismacolor pencils. Here's my color chart that I keep beside me so I can see my colors. And here is my pencil organizer that I have. And I'm going to be using French grays in this one for my koala, and then a couple pinks and some greens. I have a piece of that Nina Solar White cardstock. I'm going to be blending with gamsol. So the bottle here is what I like to use because it has this little dauber top, and I can take my paper blending stumps, just press it against that dauber top, and you can see that it absorbs into that stump, and I'm not going to make a mess. Now you can buy it like this at the art store, and this one's not been opened, so you'll see the seal is still on the top. But if you have a bottle like this, you can just pour a little into the cap and pick that up with your blending stump that way. I use this bottle to refill the one with the dauber top, because that is how I like to work. So that's what I use when I'm blending with the gamsol. Now when you are doing colored pencils in gamsol, you can use the jet black ink that we use with our watercoloring and our Copics, but you can also use the black licorice because it will not run like it does with Copics or watercolors. So that's actually what I'm going to use on this project. I think it has a really nice crisp black line, and that is what I've decided to use. So I'm just going to ink out the little koala stamp. And I'm going to stamp him out twice. I'm actually only going to color one. I usually stamp multiple images. That way, if I mess one up, I've got one waiting and I can recolor it. This little set also has a little eucalyptus branch, a heart, and a little flower. So now to get to my coloring, I'm going to start off at regular speed and then I'll speed it up. But I'm using some Prismacolor French grays here. So the thing to remember about colored pencils is you can always add more. So start light, and you can always go back and add more colored pencil later. It's hard to take it away. You can erase it, but it won't always all go away. So I'm going in with my lightest gray, and I'm just doing a very light color across all of my koala here. And next I'll go in with the next darkest color and start putting in some shading. So what I like to do when I blend with gamsol is put my colors down, and they don't have to be perfect because when you use the gamsol, it's going to break up the wax in the colored pencil and make those colors look nice and smooth, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But I'm going in with the next darkest gray, and I'm just figuring out where my shadow would be along the bottom, in his back, under his arm, that tail, the back leg, that sort of thing. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit just so you can see all this coloring, and my video isn't too terribly long. At this point I'm going in with a 70% French gray, and I'm just adding more darker shadow to the edge. And I'll just go back and forth. Now you can just color with a pencil and not blend with the gamsol. It just takes a little more effort. You can kind of be messy when you're going to blend it out. You don't have to worry about your strokes as much because those are going to disappear when you start to blend it with the gamsol and the paper stump. I understand that you can use baby oil too, but I've never actually tried that. To me that seems kind of messy, and I'm prone to making messes, so I've not tried the baby oil. So now that I've got some pencil down, I'm going to use a paper stump. And this is the one that I've designated for gray. I have quite a few of these so that I don't have to continually clean them off. They're very inexpensive, so it's not very, doesn't cost a lot of money to just buy one for every color. And I'm just going in and doing little circles and moving that gamsol around with that paper stump. And you can see how much smoother the left is than the right, where I haven't done it yet. And how much smoother the head was compared to the bottom of his body. It is going to lighten it up a little bit when you do this, I feel like, but like I said, you always start lighter and you can always go back in and add some more dark colors to it. So you'll see that now that I've blended it all out, I'm going to go in with my darker gray and start adding some shadows back in to make it just a little bit darker. When you have used the gamsol, the pencil will go on a little bit smoother the second time when you've already used it and you're going over where you've already blended. So I'm going to add a little color to his ears here, and I'm going to put pink on the bottom. Then I'm actually going to go in with like a beige color for the top. So you can blend colors together that aren't the same colors. You know, for the body I did dark and light of all the same shade, but these are two very different colors, and you can blend these together too and get some really unique looks. And now I'm just going in with that blush pink, adding a little bit of pink to his cheeks. It's going to be very subtle. you can blend that again, and it's this just light pink hue to his rosy cheeks. Now I'm using 2 pink colors to simply color the parts, and then 2 greens to do the eucalyptus just very quickly. These are really small images, so you don't need to do too much shading. So I will use the dies that go with the set to cut out all these little images, and you'll see that I actually cut them all out. I didn't even use the flowers, and I only used one of the hearts. So I just have some extra images that I'll just keep in a little bowl on my desk to use on another project. Now that I have all my pieces, I can start to assemble my card. So I was just figuring out what I wanted to do here. So I've got a fancy scallop circle and a cross stitch circle stackable, and I'm cutting those out of some cream colored cardstock. Then I'm just going to start placing my pieces on that cross stitch circle. I'm using my tweezers because these are small, and I'm tucking them underneath that koala bear. And I'm using my glue tube. This also keeps me from getting glue everywhere because it'll get on my fingers and I will mess up the project. So this keeps my project nice and clean using the tweezers on these very small pieces. And once I have these where I want them, then I will probably stick down my koala bear. I'm adding the little heart to his hands with the same liquid glue. And I've got some foam adhesive on the back of the koala so he pops up from the circle in the background. Now that he's stuck down, I can work on the scallop circle that goes behind. And I wanted to pull in the green that I use in the eucalyptus, but I didn't actually have a cardstock that was that shade of green. The cardstocks I have are more of a yellowy green. So I have pulled out my bundled sage distress ink, which is one of my favorite colors. And I'm just adding that to that cream colored cardstock and making my own custom color to go behind the cream colored circle that the koala's on. So now it will match the eucalyptus that I used in my images. You don't have to color the whole thing, just the edges, because that is all we're going to see. One thing to remember when using distress inks is to let it dry before you stick things down if you're using a dry glue like a tape runner, but liquid glue, you don't have to wait. I find that if it's still a little damp, that adhesive runner doesn't stick all the time. So now to stick my background down to my card base, so I'm just kind of making lines between all those little dots so that I make sure all the parts of my background are stuck down. And you could go the other direction if you want to and make it just a big grid, but you really don't need to. If you've done all the lines, it's going to be plenty of glue. And these are just very thin lines of glue, so I make sure that it doesn't squish and come out the little polka dot openings. Now I'm going to work on my sentiment. So I'm using that same cream colored cardstock that I cut the circles out of. And I'm just going to use this corner here and I'm going to cut it down. So I'm using my trimmer tool just to make a little banner. And I'm cutting a piece of foam tape to be the right width so that this is completely supported across the length of my little sentiment banner here. And I've already glued the circle to the card base. I seem to have missed that part in my video, but I use liquid glue to glue down the green scallop circle, that whole assembly, to the card base. And I'm using the dots on the background as a guide to make sure that my sentiment is nice and straight. I'm also using the dots on the background as a guide on where to put these little translucent green sequins that I have here just as some added embellishment. And there is the finished card. Super cute, super simple, super fun. So here is a look at that card. And I feel like it could be any time of year, not just Valentine's. And here's a closer look at that colored pencil koala. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.